Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Roman election forecasting U.S. House prediction. If we take a look at the generic ballot, we see that there's a virtual tie between Democrats and Republicans. Now, comparing this to 2022, Republicans were up by about 2.5 points nationwide when all was said and done. So that suggests that overall we can expect a slight improvement for the Democrats. Despite the Republicans' small majority, though, this does not count them out. If we take a look at the number of non-competitive seats in this election, seats that I give the presumptive party over an 80% chance of winning, we see that Republicans have 199 seats and Democrats have 196 seats. That means that these 40 toss-up seats that I have left not filled in will decide the balance of the United States House of Representatives for 2025 and 2026. Without further ado, let's get into it. I'm going to start in Maine's 2nd District, where incumbent Jared Golden has been in since 2018. Despite the fact that this district voted for Trump by just over 6 points, I'm relatively confident in Golden. In 2020, he was able to win by 6, whereas Trump won the slightly redder district by 7.5. So to me, that suggests Golden will be able to get enough ticket splitters to win. If we take a look at the polling, we will see a high amount of undecideds in the one nonpartisan poll and a close race in the Republicans' internal, which suggests to me that the Democrat can pull it off. I'd give Golden about a 60% chance. Up next, we're going to take a look at Connecticut's 5th District, where we see a rematch of Hayes versus Logan, except this time Hayes is now the incumbent. Hayes only won by 0.8%, despite the fact that Biden carried this district by just over 10. Despite that, I think she's going to do a little bit better. This time, if we take a look at the polling, Hayes' lead is by no means decisive, but it's dominant enough. She's closer to 50%, where I think the partisanship of this district gives her an 80% shot of winning. Now we're going to take a look at New York's 4th District. This has incumbent Anthony Despacito, who barely held on in New York's 2022 red wave. However, it's been redrawn and it's very Democratic leaning now. Biden is won this by 14.5 points. Because of that, I don't see Despacito holding on here. He's been slightly outspent, although he does have a cash advantage in the final stretch, so that evens out. The polling is kind of all over the place here. Some polls show a very competitive race. Other polls show the Democrat Laura Gillen far in the lead. So because of that, I'd say she has about a 70% shot of winning this. If Republicans happen to continue to strongly improve in Long Island, perhaps Despacito will hold on, but I give that only a 30% shot. Now we're going to move on to New York's 17th district. This is another Biden district that he won by 10, and with a Republican incumbent, Mike Lawler. Except this time, I think the Republicans have better fortunes. If we take a look at the polling here, the progressive Democrat Mondaire Jones has not led a poll for this entire cycle, and in fact, in the nonpartisan polling, we've seen movement towards Lawler in the final days. Because of that, I'm pretty confident he's going to win this despite the partisanship. I'd still put this in the tilt category, but I give him a 60% shot. Moving on to a race that's even closer, we have New York's 19th district with Mark Molinaro, the Republican incumbent, against Josh Riley, the Democratic challenger. Partisanship is a little bit better for Republicans here. Biden won by 4.5, but obviously they're still at a fundamental disadvantage. If we take a look at the polling, we see a narrow lead for the Democrat, but there are enough undecideds here to where Molinaro can definitely pick this up, and it's well within the margin of error. A lot of people have been quite bullish on Molinaro as a candidate, but it seems like he's underperforming Mike Lawler in these final stretches, which is quite surprising. Even so, I do think Molinaro will barely be able to get enough ticket splitters to hold on, but I'd say this is honestly one of the top 5 closest races in the House, and I'd give Molinaro between a 50 and 55% shot. Our last New York district we're going to take a look at is the 22nd district with Brandon Williams, the Republican incumbent. Biden won this seat by 11.5. I think it's a similar story to the 4th district, which we just took a look at the spending's about even, so it's not like the incumbent has an advantage there, and it's been redrawn pretty significantly, so this part with Syracuse isn't even that familiar with Williams as an incumbent. So I would also give the Democrat here a 70% shot. Now we're going to be taking a look at New Jersey's 7th district. This is the only competitive seat in the state. If we take a look at the polling, we will see a narrow lead for the Republican Thomas Keene, but certainly not enough to say the race is safe for him. Last time, Keene was doubly outspent, but he was still able to win this race by 3, despite the fact that Biden won it by about 4. This time he's also been somewhat outspent, but he has a 4-to-1 cash advantage at the end with over $2 million. And I think this is going to push him over the edge here. I'd still say this is only about a 65% shot. If Harris overperforms in the New Jersey suburbs, Keene could be out. Or if the generic ballot slightly underestimates Democrats, Keene could be out. I don't want to say that this is extremely likely like some people are saying, but I'd still give him about a 2 and 3 chance of holding on. Now we're going to move over to Pennsylvania. First, the 7th district in the northern Philly suburbs. This was a very close seat in 2022. Susan Wild won it by 2 points, whereas Biden won the seat by an even lesser margin by 0.6. But if we take a look at this polling, we see a better picture for Wild. She's not doing that great in her internals, but in this recent poll, she's up by 6. And I believe it. This is not a seat that the Republicans are necessarily targeting this cycle. They have other seats to defend, and they have a few better pickup opportunities. And Wild was able to hold on despite this seat being targeted in 2022. So I'll lean this in her favor. I'll say it's a similar percentage chance to New Jersey's 7th, 65%. Now we're going to take a look at Pennsylvania's 8th district, which is similar to the 7th, except Trump actually managed to narrowly win this district. This includes Lackawanna County, so it's a bit more working class, but the Democratic representative here, Matt Cartwright, seems to have a bit of crossover appeal with Trump supporters, with union voters, people like that. So despite the stronger partisanship for Republicans here, Cartwright has a 2-to-1 spending advantage and a 4-to-1 cash advantage in the final stretch. And if we take a look at the polling here, we see Cartwright plus 7. So because of that, I think the odds are similar, although slightly closer than the 7th district. I'd say between 60 and 65%. Now we have the 10th district, which is shaping up to be quite interesting. This is a seat that wasn't on a lot of people's radar before. Trump won it by 4, but in 2022, Scott Perry, the Republican incumbent, won it by nearly 8. However, if we take a look at the polling, there was a bombshell in early October, which shows the Democratic challenger up by 9. Now, I definitely don't think that's going to be the final result in this race, but it does show we have a true toss-up on our hands. The fundraising wasn't competitive last time, and this time Stelson has slightly outspent Perry, and the final cash is about equal. So I definitely think the margin is going to be a lot lower than it was in 2022 for him. I think he might even underperform Trump here. But I'm still going to narrowly favor incumbency and partisanship over one poll that could possibly be a fluke. But this is definitely a tilt seat for him. I'd give him a 55% shot. Moving down to Virginia, we first have the 7th district, the 2nd district. And Virginia is a state where, despite Democrats still being on top, Republicans have been doing pretty well since Glenn Youngkin. This is a seat that Biden won by about 3.5%. Biden won by 2%, whereas the Republican last time, Jen Kiggins, was able to win it by 3.5%. If we take a look at the polling in the DCCC's Cope poll, they're tied. Otherwise, she's up by one. So I definitely think this is close, but I tend to agree with the forecasters that in terms of the probabilities, it's not that close. I don't think Democrats are going to target this seat. They have easier pickup opportunities across the country where the partisanship favors them, and Kagan seems to be a pretty strong incumbent. Additionally, she has a 5-1 cash advantage in the final stretch. So I'd say she has a 70% shot. Moving on to the 7th district, if we take a look at the polling, even in the Republican Derek Anderson's own internals, Vindman is still up, so I expect him to win this race. This is Abigail Spanberger's former seat, but she is now running for the governorship in 2025, so she's retiring. In addition to the good polling situation for Vindman, he's also outspent by over 6-1, and he has a 3-1 cash advantage in the final spot. So I'd give him an 80% chance. Now we're going to take a look at North Carolina's 1st district. This is a seat that's been a toss-up for a long time, but polling has changed perceptions a bit because, as we will see, Davis in his internals is up by 11, and in a nonpartisan poll most recently, he was up by 6, 8 when you include third-party candidates. So I am going to lean this in his favor, but this is on the edge of lean and toss-up. In terms of the partisanship of this seat, Trump barely won it. Barely lost it. Biden won it by less than 2 points, and it's definitely Republican trending. I would not be shocked if Trump actually won this district in 2022, but Davis seems to be doing better, at least in terms of the polling, and I'll stick with that. Again, I think Republicans have to be on defense more than offense this cycle. Our last district in the Southeast is going to be Florida's 13th in the Tampa area, and this one could be surprisingly close. Anna Paulina Luna only outperformed Trump by a point in the massive 2022 Florida red wave, where most other candidates, Republicans, outperformed Trump by at least 10 points. If we take a look at the polling here, it is not great for Luna either. This is a tie, meaning either candidate could win. Now, ultimately, I still think Luna's going to hold on. I'd give her about a 70% shot. But if Florida's margin happens to be lower than we expect for Trump, this could be a sneaky pickup opportunity for the Democrats. Now we're going to move on up to the Midwest, where we have the state of Ohio. There are 2 competitive districts here. Up first, we have the 9th district with Marcy Kaptur. Despite the fact that this is a Republican-leaning district with Trump having won it by 3 points, Kaptur dominated last cycle, winning by 13. I certainly don't think she's going to dominate as much. The Republican candidate is not as bad as he was last time. But even so, I would still give her an 80% shot. She has represented this district since, I believe, 1983, and she has outspent her opponent by 4-1. Up to the more competitive seat in Ohio, the 13th district. This is another Republican trending district, although Biden managed to win the seat by 3 points. I think the Democrat Amelia Sykes will do reasonably well here. If we take a look at the polling, we have an internal for the Republican, which shows a tied race, so I think that's good for Sykes, and she has also outspent her opponent by 5-1. In these House races, this isn't like the presidency. Spending can really matter in terms of people knowing who a candidate is. She's the incumbent. This district is going to trend right, so I think she'll win by less than 5 points like she won last time, but ultimately I'd still give her between a 60 and 65% shot. Up to another one of the top 5 closest races, and we have Michigan's 7th district. If we take a look at the polling here, this is an extremely competitive race. We have if we take a look at the 7th district specifically, we have Barrett up in his internal polling. We have in a more recent poll Barrett slightly up, but I'm actually going to go against the polling and give the Democrat Curtis Hurdle a 50 to 55% shot here. Aside from Shiawassee County, this district is left trending. And I think that is what is going to seal the deal for Democrats here. Biden won this district by just 0.5% in 2020. So don't get me wrong, it's definitely very close. But Hurdle has a 2-to-1 cash advantage in the end. He's slightly outspent Barrett. From all the factors I can see, I think this race will very narrowly stick with the Democrats. Although, like New York's 19th district, another one of the top 5 closest races. Another nail biter here, Michigan's 8th district. This is a right trending district federally. It voted for Biden by about 2 points, but virtually all the counties are trending red. I think odds are that Trump narrowly wins this district in 2024. But even so, I think down ballot, McDonald Rivet, the Democratic candidate, has a good shot. The previous Democratic incumbent here, Dan Kildee, won by 10 points in 2022, and he has endorsed her for what that's worth. She also has a 3-to-1 cash advantage in the end. So while I think Trump narrowly wins this district, I think enough down ballot people split their ticket and the Democrats hold on. I'd give her a 55 to 60% shot. Finally, in Michigan, we have the 10th district, and this is a district that people had leaning towards John James, the Republican, for a while, but I think it's quite close. If we look at Rochester Hills, one of the more populous municipalities in this district, that's definitely left trending, and the rest of the district is kind of a jump ball. It's not clear which way it's trending. I'll still put this in James's direction, but I will only tilt it. After all, he only won by 0.5% in 2022, and the Democrats were not funding this race, whereas now they are. But even with that, James has still outspent Mar-a-Lago, his opponent, by 4-to-1, and he has a cash advantage in the final days. So even if this district trends left, at the presidential level, I think James will narrowly hold on. In general, Michigan had a blue wave in 2022, so I wouldn't expect some of these Democrats to do as well as they did before, but anything can happen, hence me only making this district a toss-up. Now we're going to move on um, Indiana's first district, which is Lake, Porter, and a little bit of LaPorte County. And all of these counties are right trending. So even though Biden won the seat by 8.5 and Frank Mervyn, the incumbent, won it by 5.5 last time, I'm only going to lean it in his favor. I give him an 80% shot. So that's still obviously quite good for him, but I don't think he had a competent opponent last time, and I think the trends in these counties will continue. I think Trump will improve again, and I could see Mervyn being pushed down to a few points. Now we're going to move on to Illinois with the Quad Cities in the 7th district. This is kind of a similar story to Indiana's first district. It's a point less blue in the 2020 election, but it doesn't have trends to the right like the other district. Last time the race was within 4 points, although the Sorensen's opponent was not competent. I think could be a bit closer this time, but I'm still going to put it in the lean category. I'd also give Democrats an 80% shot here. Now we're going to take a look at Wisconsin's 3rd district, and I have no doubt that Trump will win this district by mid-single digits. But Van Orden, the Republican candidate, I don't think is that great. The driftless area, as we saw in 2023, for instance, with the Supreme Court race, is clearly still able to vote for Democrats in other races besides the president, and he's only barely outspent his Democratic challenger. However, he does have a 3-to-1 cash advantage at the end, and I think that could finally push some reluctant voters in his direction, but I'll only tilt it toward him. I'd give him a 60% chance. Now we're moving on to Iowa, where we have the first district. Iowa voters tend to be more elastic, so I'm going to be a bit cautious about this seat, even though Miller Meeks, the Republican, won it by 7 points last time. The Democrat has actually outspent her despite the fact that she's the incumbent, so that's not great for her. If we take a look at the polling here, we will see a good race for the Democrat in terms of the DCCC's targeting polling. I definitely don't think the Democrat's going to win this race by 4 if they win it at all, which I think is probably not going to happen, as you can see by my rating. But Iowa voters are elastic. Trump only won this district by about 3, so it could be close. I give Miller Meeks a 70% shot. Now we're up to the more competitive seat in Iowa, the 3rd district. Trump won this seat by 0.3%, so this is a true 50-50 district. Zach Nunn, the Republican, won this by just under a point in 2022, but he defeated a Democratic incumbent, Cindy Axne. That bodes well for him. He was able to win in a competitive race. If we take a look at the polling, we see this RMG poll with a lot of decided, so that's a virtual tie. And we see a similar story to the previous race with the Democrat up in their own internal. I think because of partisanship, this race is closer, but I still give Nunn a 55 to 60% shot. Again, because of elasticity, it is possible that the Democrats manage to pick it up, but I'm going to stick with incumbency for this one. Now we're going to take a look at Nebraska's 2nd district, where Don Bacon is in the fight of his life here. Biden won this seat by about 6 in 2020, whereas Bacon held on by a little bit over 2 in 2022. But unfortunately for him, I think in 2024 it's going to be a different story. Sorry about that. If we take a look at the polling, for instance, it does not paint a good picture for Bacon. This is one of the most polled House races in the country because of Nebraska's 2nd district being competitive at the presidential level, and we see in all these nonpartisan polls, Vargas has a lead. In the end, I think it will be closer than that. Bacon will still get some ticket splitters, and I do think he has a decent shot of winning. I only give Vargas a 55% chance, but the polling and the partisan fundamentals, especially because Harris is expected to maintain or improve Biden's margin in this district, means that I think it's narrowly going to flip blue. Moving on to Colorado, we have 2 competitive districts here. First, the 3rd district. This is a district where the Democrat raised a massive amount of money, $16 million, because Lauren Boebert was supposed to run in this district. She almost lost last time despite the fact that Trump won it by over 8 points. But because of her unpopularity, she switched over to this new redder district. So because of that, despite the Democrats' massive fundraising advantage, I'm still going to lean this in the Republicans' favor just because of the partisanship. I don't think Frisch is going to be able to win this with presidential turnout, so I'd give the Republicans an 80% shot here. Now we have this suburban seat, Colorado's 8th district. This was a seat that the Republicans heavily targeted in 2022 since Biden won it by just under 5, and Caraveo, the Democrat, was able to just narrowly win it by under a point, which is a testament to her considering, again, this district was heavily targeted. She does have a 3-to-1 fundraising advantage, and she has a 4-to-1 cash advantage at the very end. But if we take a look at the polling here, we still see quite a close race. We see perhaps some movement towards her, but realistically, this could be variance for the same result. So while I thought this would be a lean race a few months ago, I'm going to keep it at the upper end of the tilt category and say Caraveo has a 60% shot. Now we're moving on to the only competitive race in New Mexico that I see, which is the 2nd district. And this is an interesting state in that while Republicans have improved Hispanic voters across a lot of the country. They have not managed to do that nearly as much in New Mexico, and I don't really see them pulling that off this cycle either. Last time, Vasquez, the Democrat, was able to defeat the Republican incumbent Yvette Harrell um, by a decent margin, if I can just pull that up. It was by just under a point, whereas Biden won the seat by 6. So that shows that Harrell is a decent candidate, and it's a rematch of last time. So I think Vasquez might slightly underperform Harris here. But even so, Vasquez in the end, he has a 3-1 cash advantage. He's the incumbent. Republicans are not targeting New Mexico this cycle. I give him a 75% shot. Moving on to Arizona, one of the crucial 7 swing states in this election, we have the 1st district in Maricopa County, and I thought this would be a gettable pickup for the Dems a few months ago, but now I don't see it. Dave Schweikert, despite winning by less than a point last time, I think is in a good position in his Democratic challenger's own internal polling. We only see a tie. From what I've heard, he's not been running the best campaign. So while if Harris improves in Maricopa, then Schweikert could certainly go down. Again, this is still in the toss-up category, but I would give Schweikert a 55 to 60% shot of winning. We also have this competitive seat, Arizona's 6th district nearby, where Juan Ciscomani, he managed to slightly outperform Trump's margin, whereas Schweikert underperformed it. So that is good for him, number one. And number two, we don't really have much polling here, but based on the fact that Ciscomani is the incumbent, and in general, aside from the Senate election, Arizona seems to be a bit better for Republicans this cycle than it has been the last few cycles, I'd give the incumbent a 60% shot of holding on here. Now we're going to look at Montana. This is a seat that a lot of Democrats were excited about a few months ago, but it's not looking like it's going to pan out for them this time. People thought John Tester's coattails could lead the Democrat over Ryan Zinke, the Republican, but that definitely does not seem to be the case if we take a look at the polling for this district. For instance, we will see that Zinke is leading every poll, even the Democrats' internal polls. So I'd give him about an 80% shot. Tester doesn't seem to be performing that well at the Senate level anyway, so it's possible he might not even win this district. Now we're going to go to Washington's 3rd, where Gluesenkamp-Perez is in the fight of her life against Joe Kent in a rematch. However, this is a seat that Trump won by over 4 points, but Gluesenkamp-Perez was able to win it by under a point in 2022. Now she's the incumbent, and I'm going to narrowly stick with her in this race because of candidate quality. Again, though, low ticket splitting could mean Kent picks this up. I'd not be surprised. It's only in the tilt category, but I'm going to stick with Perez. Now we're in Oregon's 5th district, where we have a Republican incumbent in a Democratic-leaning area, so the inverse of Washington's 3rd district, where Biden won the seat by 9 points. So the fact that Lori Chavez de Raymer was able to win this seat by 2 is pretty impressive for her, but I don't think she's going to hold on in the Democratic primary. Instead of renominating the more progressive candidate who lost, the Democrats nominated the more moderate candidate, and so because of these fundamentals, I give them a 55 to 60% shot of unseating de Raymer. Now we have 2 states left, California and Alaska. These states will be some of the last to have the polls close, so based on my forecast, we won't know who's going to win the House for a while. First, we'll take a look at California. In general, I'm pretty bullish on Republicans' chances down ballot in this state, but not so much in the 13th district. Duarte was able to barely win this district in 2022, whereas Biden won it by 10 points in 2020. And while it will probably trend in the Republicans' direction, if you take a look at the 22 data, Hispanic turnout in this district was just so low. It only needs to go up a little bit. I think, again, Hispanic Latino voters will trend in the Republicans' direction, but I still think they will narrowly back Democrats. So, because of that, I will give Adam Gray a 65% chance of picking up this seat. Now we have the 22nd district with David Valadao. This is another one of the top 5 closest races, in my opinion. This is a Biden plus 13 seat. But Valdeo, he's tried and true. He actually voted to impeach Trump, so I think he can get a lot of crossover support from moderate voters. And I think in a miracle run, he'll narrowly hold on to this. I don't think he's going to win by 3 points like he did in 2022. I think this could come down to perhaps even hundreds of votes. But he's been able to win it again and again. I'm not going to overanalyze it. I'm going to stick with the incumbent. The 27th district is similar to the 22nd district. Biden won it by 12.5, but Mike Garcia, the Republican, did even better than David Valadao did in 2022, winning by 6.5 points. However, unlike the money situation in the 22nd district, the Democrat White Sides has outspent Garcia by 2-1. That's not great for him, but Garcia has a 2-1 cash advantage in the final stretch. I think he can get his get out the vote operation. Clearly, he's an overperformer, and so in another one of the top 5 closest races, in my opinion, I have the Republican narrowly skirting by. Now on to the LA area. First, we have the 41st district with Ken Calvert, and this is the final one of the top 5 closest races, in my opinion. Compared to other California Republicans, Ken Calvert did not overperform as much. He underperformed Mike Garcia and other Republican candidates who were in Democratic leaning districts, whereas Trump won this seat by a point. So that doesn't look great for him. The Democrat does have a 2-1 spending advantage, but both of them have spent, I believe, over 5 million. So how much that really matters once you're at such a high number is debatable to me. Forecasters have stuck with Calvert for a long time, so I guess I'll stick with him, give him a 50 to 55% shot, but I don't feel confident about it. I could see Will Rollins picking up this seat, but I will stick with Ken Calvert. Now we have the 45th district in California, and if we take a look at the polling here, we see an extremely close race. Both candidates are up in their internals. A poll from a month ago shows trans slightly up, but enough undecideds to where the race could go either way. I'm going to stick with Michelle Steele, the incumbent here. A lot of people say this race is closer than Ken Calvert's race. I actually think, despite the fact that this district is Democratic leaning at the presidential level, that Steele will do slightly better. I'd give her a 55 to 60% shot, but again, it's still a tilt. So don't be surprised if the Democrats pick this one up. Finally, we have California's 47th district, and this is a race that I did not expect to be competitive, but it seems like the Republican Scott Baugh, who last time ran against Katie Porter, is running a good campaign. If we take a look at the polls, this same USC poll that has shown all these Democrats narrowly up actually shows Baugh up, and this is despite the fact that this is a D+11 district in 2022. So I'm not going to believe this poll necessarily, because then we see in an internal poll for Baugh that Min is up. I'm still going to lean it in the Democrats' direction, but I'd only give them about a 2/3 chance of getting this seat. Finally, we have our last seat. We're at 217 to 217. That means Alaska, the last state in the union to have its polls closed, who uses ranked choice voting, will determine the House, and we probably won't know its results for a while because Alaska is looking to be extremely close. We only have internal polls, so those will favor the Republican. But I do think it's significant that if we look at these rounds of voting, we see Begic's percentage goes up. So people in these polls, and Alaska does ranked choice voting, so that's why this is important. People in these polls who voted for the Green Party candidate and the other Democratic candidate are willing to say, I prefer Begich over Peltola. If that happens, Peltola is going to lose this race. And she's an electoral juggernaut. She was able to win this seat by almost 10 points in 2022, despite the fact that Trump won Alaska by over 10 points. So because of her ability to win again and again and her 5-1 spending advantage over Nick Begich, I would say she has a 55 to 60% chance of winning, but we shouldn't count out Begich. He's a much better candidate than Sarah Palin, and I think he will make this race extremely close. So because we're going to get to the second or third round of voting, we might not know who wins the US House for an extremely long time. But in the end, I think this is going to be basically as close as it can possibly get, with Democrats having 218 seats, with Republicans having 217 seats. Functionally, for either president, this Congress would be a mess to work with, as the previous one is. But we'll have to see if I'm correct. What did you think? Comment down below. Which seats do you live in and have more information about, so perhaps I can update my information. Keep your eyes peeled. I'll have a presidential forecast and possibly some other videos before the election soon. This has been Roman's election forecasting. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell.